Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome back to Podiatry Marketing. And with me is my co-host and partner in crime. It is Big Jim Mack, all the way over in Canada. How are you doing today, Jim?
Things are good. Things are good. I'm still trying to work off some of those pounds from the holidays. So I definitely live up to that nickname for sure. All the pumpkin pie, squash pie, turkey, ham, a big New Year's dinner with my in-laws here in Quebec. Yeah, I definitely need to get on the treadmill, the bike, and kind of get some New Year's resolutions rolling. So no, things are good with me.
So I always find it interesting that you guys don't do meat pies. You always talk about pumpkin pie and cherry pie, and they have all these pies every time I've been to America. They have pie, but they don't do the good Aussie meat pie.
So it's funny you bring that up because actually in Quebec, we eat, one of the things we have at New Year's is tourtière, and that is a meat pie. So like I do have some meat pie there. And actually one of the first places I ever ate in Montreal when I got here, I don't know if they're Kiwis or they're from Australia, but there is an Australian meat pie spot here not too far away from where I live in Montreal. So
but you're blessed.
I talk more about the sweet pies and not the meat pies, but yeah, things are good here in Montreal.
Okay, so this is week 2 of January. And so I always find the beginning of the year, it takes a little bit of just getting the momentum going. You start your business back, you finish the holidays. So we are going to keep everyone motivated this year. So what is today's topic?
Yeah, so today we're going to talk about Google being a moving target. And like you said, we're just starting off 2023. We don't want to bombard people with way too much information or things aren't relevant to their practice. But I think everyone knows Google. They use it on a daily basis, probably to search for the weather. What time is it in Cairn, Australia? Whatever you're typing into Google. So we just want to get into an understanding about how Google works and just kind of things to be aware of with their platform, because there are rules associated with it. They're always kind of changing the rules to benefit themselves. And we want to get into specifics around that today.
Are you saying Google isn't in it for us? They're in it for themselves?
Well, with all these venture capitalist funded American-based corporations, the bottom line, the investors,
True though.
They've got to find ways to grow and increase the amount of revenue on their balance sheets, right? And usually Google is their main form of creating revenue isn't your free Gmail account. It's not you using google.com for free. It's all the different types of advertising they serve in different places. So it's important to know if you're not paying for the product, you kind of are the product, right? So we'll get into some of those details today.
Well, I suppose it's no different when you're talking about profits. It's like your podiatry business. Yes, we want to look after our patients, but in the end, you set up a business because you want it to be profitable. So I think Google has to do exactly the same thing. So I assume they're always moving it because they're trying to work out what is the best thing that's going to bring profits in for their business. And then we've got to adapt our businesses to get the most out of it.
No, that's a perfect example, is that when they first started, right? This was a site that had no advertising on it. It was and they were looking for that way to actually generate revenue for their business. And ads was kind of the thing that became very valuable, whether it be the search ads was kind of where they started, and now display ads. They own YouTube, so they can run YouTube advertising. But it is one of those things where this quest for revenue is and can lead to, I wouldn't say a terrible user experience, but everyone has ideas about what they think about advertising, whether it be search advertising or display advertising, and really kind of getting down to what does that mean for your practice, right? And I would say that it's really important to note that for a long time, the way Google worked was that you typed in those search words and you pushed search, and it would really bring, at the very beginning, no advertisement, but basically the best 5 or 10 links. And you would Google's job was to send you to that great website. That's where those blue links, you click there and you're going to have something that's a great result. And that's the reason why it beat out things like Ask Jeeves or Lycos or Alta Vista, some of these old school search engines that maybe not everyone in the audience remembers, but that's how Google got popular, is that it would send, the way they built their algorithm, the links were very relevant. So people just kept on coming back to this website, even though it wasn't the first search engine. Yahoo and some of these other ones were, but it was the best. But what's happening over time now is that they really want you to stay on Google-based properties. They don't want to send you to, if a patient in your local area is looking for your business, or even podiatrist near me search terms now, they really want to find a way to almost enrich themselves as opposed to send patients to you anymore. So when you search, let's say the name of your practice, right? Maybe it's Sydney Podiatry Associates. You're going to see that box on their website, that kind of like knowledge box on the right side that has your name, your phone number, your address is right there. So there's almost no incentive for, if someone wants to call and make an appointment, there's maybe a book an appointment button there, and it might get to that scheduling page on your website. But Google is trying to find ways to keep people on google.com so they can serve these ads to people. So it's important to note that the way Google is doing things has changed. So it's not something where a tactic someone used, maybe an SEO person or your marketing person used 5 years ago on Google. Like, those things are quickly kind of eliminated by Google to kind of, it's almost the Costco shopping experience. I don't know if you have these big bulk stores in Australia, but at Costco.
Yeah, there's a few around. There's a couple of them around.
One of the tricks that they do at Costco is that they're always moving the different items around the store. So it's almost like a treasure hunt, and you never get into this routine where you can just have your exact shopping list down, grab your stuff and get out. It's always like the peanuts are next to the big screen TVs, or like next week the tacos are next to the $20 bottle of wine or something. Or they're trying to find
ways.
It's pretty
clever though.
It's very
like
clever.
When you think about that, like if you go to your normal supermarket, we have here Woolworths and Coles are our two big supermarkets. And I just know if I go and do the shopping, I know what is in which aisle because it never changes. The ends, they will change, and there might be a promotion there, and that's supposed to be quite expensive for those products to be on each of those ends. But I can see how Costco, where you normally go, your peanuts are here, and next thing, hang on, they've put the peanuts down in the wine aisle. It's pretty hard to walk down the wine aisle without going, well, actually, I've been working hard today. I deserve a bottle of wine or two. Yeah, and then moving it somewhere else. So I think it's very clever. So Google is doing exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, they're not
moving the peanuts.
They're not moving the peanuts or the wine or next to the wine, but it is a similar thing where you can't have a static strategy or a set of ways to approach Google. So either you as a podiatrist or the person handling your marketing really has to be on top of these algorithm updates, because every 3 months or 2 months, Google is changing the way they're kind of rearranging those links in that top 10. And sometimes changes need to be made to your website. Different technical things need to be implemented. Maybe a different type of page needs to be on your website. A different approach to the overall way you're presenting yourself on your website has to change. Maybe there has to be video embeds to make sure that people are staying longer on those pages, so they're watching the video, so they're longer, because it is this feedback loop, right? It's not only search, but a lot of people use Google Analytics, which gives Google information about how long people stay on your website. So it is this thing where you have to kind of keep your eye on the ball. And I guess that's this kind of first part of our chat today. It's just either you or someone that's doing your marketing has to stay on top of these changes, because most recently, back in May, a lot of podiatry websites lost somewhere between 50 to 60% of the traffic to the websites, because Google decided to send a lot of terms like diagnosis or treatment terms to big authoritative websites like Mayo Clinic or the Cleveland Clinic or WebMD. They don't want to send it to your small little podiatry site about what a bunion is. They want to send it to these big authoritative websites that have a lot of traffic to hopefully get those big sites to buy advertising, because they'll buy more advertising than you will. So it's a bit of a game. So you or the person you're working with needs to keep their eye on the ball, number one.
Yeah, and I have noticed that there was something I was searching for just recently, and I can't remember what it was that I typed in, but the first 3 things that came up were actually all YouTube videos.
Yeah.
And those YouTube videos, all 3 of them were really good, was exactly what I was looking for. But the actual company that produced the product I was looking for was way down the page. It was probably about 8th on the page, but it was all these other places that were talking about it, but also had 500,000 views. So Google straight away were going, well, this is the information you want. We're going to send you here because these are more popular.
Now, that's a really great point. I think that it kind of touches on the basis of what is the user intent, and depending on what you're searching. For example, at least for right now, if someone types in like podiatrist near me, the way they've used their algorithm is that usually videos are not going to show up for that. You're going to get this kind of what we call like a local pack. So the ads will show up. It'll be like this local pack, which is like the map with usually 3 links next to it that are kind of usually based off the proximity. So your cell phone or your desktop has an IP address. Google can tell where that's located at, and then basically says these are the places closest to you, and maybe it ranks them by the number of ratings or reviews they have. And then that area below is that kind of free or organic area that is constantly kind of being in flux. And like you said, sometimes for certain products, if I type in maybe like how to change a light bulb, like some videos from YouTube will show up there. But if you type in podiatrist Cleveland or podiatrist Detroit, like you're not going to get videos there. So people, they're spending a lot of time maybe making I'm a podiatrist in Detroit videos. Not a lot of people are going to be searching YouTube for that. And at least for right now, it doesn't pull it into YouTube, into the Google results, but it is something to be aware of. And I'm always looking at those results to make sure that if videos were to come in there, that the podiatrists I work with, that we have things optimized. But it is, like you said, it does kind of change depending on what you're searching for and what you see in the results.
Yeah. So if I typed in, how do I strap my heel for heel pain, then that may not give me a list of podiatrists. It could give me videos. But if there's a podiatrist in my local area that actually has a number of videos on that particular area and it's optimized the right way, then that could show up in that search results.
Yeah, it could. But like I said, there's a lot of what's happening right now is that a lot of that kind of more general information, I mean, it has to be pretty niche, I would say. A lot of that general information, if you had let's say you're a clinic in Detroit and you have a video about what a bunion is, at least for right now, like all of that traffic is, whether it be video, images, the articles to it, like even if you're that local podiatrist, if you're on page 1, you're doing something very right, because a lot of that stuff is just going straight to these big websites right now. But it's not impossible, but it definitely, like I said, Google's always changing their algorithm. So there could be, they flip a switch or they change this thing or that thing, and then all of a sudden it could be very relevant. So like I talked about earlier, like Google's always changing the rules and you're playing their game. So it might be something where the slots hit and then video is a local thing as well. So it's something to be aware of.
Yeah, well, I just typed in what's a bunion because you said that, just to see out of curiosity what would come up. And it's funny that the number 1 place that came up was the Mayo Clinic. It's right at the top. There's no ads, there's no nothing. It's just the Mayo Clinic. And then it's got Ortho Info, Cleveland Clinic.
Yep.
Health Direct, WebMD. So these are all ones that you actually mentioned. Foot Health Facts, NHS UK, lifespan.org, and Wikipedia.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like they just want to send all these big sites the traffic. And then, like I said, I don't know if they're trying to I don't think that maybe there's more money in these bigger websites to pay for advertising as opposed to a small 1 or 2 podiatrist practice who has kind of a cap on their budget. No podiatrist is going to spend $5,000 or $10,000 in Google ads, but maybe WebMD would if it helped them get more traffic. So,
yeah, well, they always say the best place to bury a body is on page 2 of Google.
Exactly.
So what do podiatrists need to do then? So obviously they should talk to you, because this is what you do day in, day out. You're always reading this information. You're keeping up to date. So if a podiatrist is, because I read somewhere, I can't remember who, I was on a webinar and someone was talking about this, and they actually said that if you've been using an online marketing provider and all of a sudden you've noticed your results taking quite a big dive and you're not getting the results that you are, they said for them just to turn around and say, oh yeah, well the algorithm's changed, so you just got to expect that, is a lazy response. They said, because they really should be on top of and sort of in front of what the algorithm, be taking a bit of through their experience, they should know not exactly be able to predict what changes are going to happen, but they should be able to make changes pretty fast to keep your business where it should be.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think number 1, I would say is, and everyone gets these cold calls, probably gets cold emails. Number 1 is to just ignore anyone that like guarantees that they're going to put you in the number one spot. That's probably the rule number one.
Are you saying that email I got from Raul was not real? He said he could make me number one.
I mean, I'm not going to throw shade on him, but like my experience is that no one can guarantee those things. They may try really hard. They might use short-term tactics that long-term hurt your website, but that was something that was more of a gamification of the ratings and the rankings back in the day, but not so much now. I would also say that it's really important, like you mentioned, if the people are blaming it on the algorithm, I think it's also important to understand the different types of traffic that your website receives. And I think a lot of like I mentioned, there's this big drop in kind of across the board for most podiatry clinics that I saw in May. And some of that is for what I wouldn't say that it's irrelevant traffic, but it's not traffic that's necessarily going to lead. It might be kind of like a first touch type of traffic, meaning like if my clinic website had what is a bunion, it might be nice if someone comes and reads about it. That's not something I would ever want to like advertise on, right? Because it's something that I'm going to be paying a lot of money for, basically educating my clients. So if I could get that to rank on the organic, where it's the free part of Google, that would be fantastic. But like I said, and I kind of disagree a little bit with that person that told you that. Yeah. I don't think anyone really saw that Google's going to make a change and then basically just push all this traffic towards these big websites. Like they decided to do that, and maybe that Google and other tech companies are always looking for revenue, so maybe it's inevitable. But I think it is what you can do to protect yourself from something like that is, what are those topics or those relevant pages? And we'll get into what's working now, right? And this could change. And I noticed that even in some of the places where I have some of my podiatry clients, I'm really having to kind of fight against this. But one of the big things I think is working now is this kind of like a local approach, as opposed to just, like I said, this educational, we're going to describe what a bunion is or what a bunion treatment is. I think those are good pages to have on your website, but to think that those are the pages that are going to like convert into a new patient, you really want to focus. The ones that are going to convert are the ones that are more that local expert, photos of you showing you doing those things, but you may not get like a ton of traffic on those like heel pain, bunion surgery pages. You want to focus on those like what I call like areas we serve pages. So if you're located in Detroit, right, like you want to rank number one for Detroit podiatrist or Detroit foot surgeon, or if there's 5 suburbs around Detroit that you see a lot of great patients from, what are those 5 different locations, and build out not only pages on your website for it, but then run ads for those locations. Because if it's convenient for someone, and have those ads targeted locally, right? Target people like, or just make sure that it's visible to people in that suburb so that they know that you're there and you're just getting visibility locally. There's no use in you being a podiatrist in Detroit and like advertising in Idaho or California, right? So just try to like dominate your local market and show the value to your local market. And that's kind of like the first step that I think can be beneficial. And that kind of plays out in some different ways that we can get to in a little bit.
Yeah. So with Google as well, they're encouraging you to put photos onto the Google page. How important is that to keep updating and making sure you're putting regular photos up there, or is that not as important now?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some, like I talked about, when you're searching the name of your practice, or when your name comes up in that local, like maybe you're in those 3 links next to the map. Yeah. I think it's important from like a branding perspective. You want to make sure that whatever's on Google kind of matches your website. So if they end up clicking through to your website, it's not like there was these like random pictures on Google and now you have a great website, or you have great photos on the Google business profile and then your website looks nothing like it, right? That you want to like a smooth.
I've seen that.
Yeah, it's not uncommon, and it sounds kind of obvious to me because I'm always in this stuff, right? But like someone that, and what will sometimes happen too is that you take your eye off of your Google business profile for a while, and then sometimes Google will allow kind of user-generated photos. So your patient or maybe a staff member took a picture of like your empty waiting room, which is like my least favorite photo of any. It's almost worse to me than like the footprints in the sand photos. Like the empty waiting room or the empty treatment room is.
You don't like that one, the footprints in the sand. What about the flower between the toe?
Not my thing. I mean, you can have
Your
that. No, not my thing. But like I'm saying though, I think it is important to look at the Google Business Profile, those photos, and make sure they are on brand and showing the podiatrist and the staff looking very professional with patients, and it's not empty rooms. So I think, like you said, there's this having, maybe it's every year, every 2 years, having someone take updated photos of you, your staff, and then kind of either mock patients or patients who have given consent to show people what you do, because that's going to be, whether it's on your website or your Google Business Profile, extremely valuable. And it can be used on your Facebook, or if you get so popular that you need display advertising, that can be used there as well. But I think that's a good point about the Google Business Profile for sure.
Okay, so what else in the area, like when it comes to things that are changing, that we need to sort of, well, for the average podiatrist in the clinic who is quite busy doing what they're doing, they don't have time to do this, to really stay on top of it. So this is why they reach out and they use different companies. So what other advice would you be giving them other than they should be contacting you?
Yeah, I mean, besides getting in contact with
Well, you don't want everyone contacting you, because then you wouldn't be able to do the podcast with me anymore.
No, I'd be too
busy,
inundated building out these websites and helping out people. No, I think it is important to really, like, the mindset is like a locally relevant, you're the local expert, right? The local foot and ankle care expert. And then whether it's your website or your Google Business Profile, I think it is important to understand the power of Google search ads. And I think we've touched on this a little bit, and maybe we'll do a podcast on Podiatry Legends at some point. But
yeah,
when someone types something into the search box and they get either an ad or an organic result that really connects with them, like, that's the magic. That's that aha moment. And there's ways of creating the aha moment for the people in your community, and where it's a very relevant ad or it's a very relevant search result that leads to a patient appointment. So I see a lot of generic looking either ads, or it's fine to advertise in the term like podiatrist near me. But if you see that in the advertisement there, the first result is like podiatrist near me, Detroit, like, that doesn't really connect with anybody either on a professional or emotional level. I think it is good to know that you're nearby, but just these small little touches can make a big difference. So I think it is, I guess the biggest takeaway today is to know that Google is still a relevant platform, but just know that it's always kind of changing. And unless you have time to kind of keep track of those changes and be proactive, you're best to have either someone consulting with you or someone working with you that is on top of these changes, so that you don't be 6 months or a year after some major updates, traffic is dropped and you have no idea why and where are the new patients at. And I think that's what's really important. And whether it's a great website that kind of provides information that's relevant to people, that shows you that you're the kind of local expert, that's the first step. And then how do you get Google to, like, how do you kind of learn those rules or play the game with Google? Because like I said, from the top, Google likes to change things around. It's a business for them. It's a moving target. And unless you're paying attention and playing by their rules, it's really hard. It gets harder and harder to be rewarded by this really valuable service. But at the same time, they're a business that doesn't actually want to send you as much traffic as they used to want to.
Okay. So does Google ever change something and then all of a sudden they've gone, damn it, that wasn't a good change, and they change it back? Does that ever happen?
Well, that's another little small pushback I was going to have with what you mentioned. Oh, you should know that these algorithm changes are going to happen.
Yeah.
Set of focus is that. So let's say you're super reactionary, or you're trying to be so proactive that you outguess Google. I've had it happen a few times where in digital marketing, I wish that most good decisions are made either month to month or quarter to quarter. If you're working with an agency who's doing things day to day or week to week, that's making changes or doing things. Google does roll back the algorithm. They'll test things to see whether it works or not. And if you have an agency or someone that's always trying to be first or do those changes, you want to see, in my mind, if there's 2 months in a row of something kind of going in a certain direction, either well or poorly, that's like a minimal time frame to like institute some tests or some changes. Obviously, if there's huge drop-offs, maybe like a technical audit or something needs to be done more urgently or emergently. But, you know, if you're not looking at it from month to month or quarter to quarter, I think people are just kind of like spinning their wheels, and kind of like we talked about with some of the blogging, like making content just to make content, kind of like blogging farms or content farms, like just making content to make content before you have a good website. It's a similar thing with Google. If you're making all these changes, trying to predict what Google's doing, or Google rolled out some massive update to the algorithm and there has been changes, it's more about the trends than it is like what happened this month.
Okay. I think that's good. It's one of those things that Google sometimes just looks like this massive beast, which it is. It is a big beast, but this is why there's people like you who are sort of all over this. And it's true what you said about looking at trends. And even I always say that with people when you're looking at KPIs in your clinic. 1 week can tell you something, but a month gives you more information. 2 months gives you even more information. So the more you're actually measuring these numbers over the long term, the more you can actually see the peaks and the troughs. And if you have one bad day in your clinic, you don't totally sack your whole staff and replace them with new people. But if one day turns into a week to a month to a quarter, then you start thinking, okay, maybe I do need to make changes. So I think this is why people, if they're doing it themselves, great. And if they know what they're doing, but if not, dealing with someone like yourself, especially because they can talk to you. I don't know what happens in the bigger companies, who they're talking to, what their expertise is, but I know at least if I was going to do something, I would probably talk to you directly.
Yeah, I think I'm always happy to answer people's questions too, right? Even if you don't want to bring me on as your consultant or kind of the builder for your website or for your digital marketing project, I'm always happy to share this information. That's why I got into it in the first place. Is I had colleagues, podiatry school classmates that just had no clue what was going on with Google, or why were they spending here and not here, and what was working and not working. So yeah, I'm really happy to provide that as a service. And I think, like you mentioned too, right? The good thing about Google is that it's definitely a value add, but it's not necessarily, it can bring a lot of great patients and traffic to foot traffic to your clinic. But at the same time, if adjustments need to be made, it's not this, I've never seen a podiatry clinic get more than 1,000 to 2,000, I would say, relevant visits. Like you could churn out a bunch of content and get all kinds of irrelevant people coming to your website. You have a great video about heel pain that is seen around the world, and you're getting people that are never going to actually come to practice.
It's true.
Which isn't an awful thing, but you know, so if you do need to make some course corrections or do some things, like a site being off for a day or two to kind of like clear things up is not the end of the world. But I think just having that basic information about what Google is, what the rules are, ways to like play the game with them to really kind of build out an online presence that's not only beneficial to your patients, but also really brings long-term sustainability and joy to your practice is really what it's all about. So definitely open to questions or concerns from our listeners, because that's why I do this podcast with you. Otherwise, I'd just be sitting in my basement, I don't know, doing some other random stuff on the internet. But I really enjoy working with my colleagues and podiatrists from around the world, really address these opportunities head on.
No, I think it's fantastic. So, Jim, I think on that note, we will wrap this episode up. So I will see you again next week.
Sounds like a
winner. Thank you very much. Okay, bye.
Bye now.